YouTube! It's Lilith here. Today we are in sunny New York City on a beautiful autumn day. My day began a little bumpy as I am terrible with directions and went on many unnecessary detours. Nevertheless, I made it. I like to keep myself as hands-free as possible in the museum, and sometimes even holding the map is burdensome and distracting. I want to talk about museums with you guys because I am curious as to what your experiences with them are. When you think of a museum, is it a fun place? A romantic place? A somber, serious place? I invite you to consider thinking about the museum through the senses. The word senses, or the word sense, has endless definitions and connotations. I am referring to them here as both the physical senses of the human body, as well as the senses of senses, or the conscious observation that integrates information in our mind to form our reality. I want to bring you into the museum with me because I want to share my thoughts with you. I realized recently that I had been approaching the museum in a closed-minded way. I thought if I took photos of artworks on my phone, my job is done here and my role as visitor is fulfilled. It wasn't until I was enrolled in a class called Visual Encounters through the RISD Museum that I began thinking about what museums represent as a resource, as a monument, and perhaps as a memento. The museum reminds us that knowledge does not just come from books and the internet, but from the full-body experience and interpretation of our environment. Multisensory museum experiences are still few and far in between. Touch and smell in museums are still subject to the sense hierarchy that elevates and privileges sight above other senses. When I go to museums, I tend to pack light. I decided to dress in something comfortable and rather close-fitting. To allow easy movement, I chose a breathable fabric and a skirt. I prefer a shoulder tote over a backpack because the staff will often request me to coat-check my bag, and then I have to carry my notebook, my phone, and my stationery in my arms. Museums are places where we have a chance to explore and contemplate objects. Curious and bewildering, functional, elegant. They are also places where we encounter one another, create social bonds, share stories, gauge our opinions, and debate ideas. Although surface touch has been banned from museums, other bodily sensations are not. Our body is a much richer source of sensations than just surface touch. Even if we are forced to keep distance from a painting or a sculpture, and thus seemingly allowed only a visual experience, our brain builds a representation of the observed object that goes far beyond each single sensory modality. This occurs because our perceptual experience is fundamentally integrative, binding together in a seamless way. When we evoke touch through sight or hearing, our bodies anticipate the sensation of touch, especially when we are particularly close to an object. We constantly experience other bodily senses while in the museum environment as well. It's difficult to know what people in the past did with their bodies, and it is also difficult to know what they did with the things around them. One cannot assume that the function of an object is evident in its design. Ways of walking, eating, touching, and smelling are often so taken for granted that they are neglected by many art historians. It takes a thorough observer to record the ordinary bodily motions of daily life. I was presented with an experience that emphasizes the material aspects of objects, which then transformed into a teaching moment. By further interpreting an object beyond its tangible form, without discarding its materiality, we could learn far more about one another's personal and cultural narrative. How are the cultural meanings and values of these objects embedded in our social life? Do these objects have their own social life? Instead of simply viewing objects and things as a world of surfaces onto which we project significance, shouldn't we be more encouraged to investigate the actual relationships people had with them? We could learn what meanings objects give to its owners and how objects can determine how the world is experienced, both inside and outside the museum. Material culture is the study of social life, of things, investigating furniture or clothing, for example, in order to uncover how objects matter to the constitution of the social world. The sensory life of things, or the ways in which objects are experienced and imbued with meaning. These objects in museums, removed from ordinary social use, may seem to be frozen in time and space. The senses situates at an unstable crossroads between nature and culture. Touching objects to acquire information is a deep-rooted instinct in all human beings. Early museums in the 17th and 18th century catered to this need by encouraging visitors to touch the exhibits. Constance Classen writes, "The museum tour led by a curator matched the house tour that might be offered by a host. The curator, as gracious host, was expected to provide information about the collection and offer it up to be touched. The museum visitors, as polite guests, were expected to show their interest and goodwill by asking questions and by touching the objects. The switch towards our current touchless museum experience was brought on for several reasons. The impossibility of controlling uncultured masses of visitors, improvement of display techniques and electric lighting, which reduced the need to handle the object in order to see it, and the new prominent role of sight in 19th century cultural discourse, such as essays written by Charles Darwin, Sigmund Freud, and others. Has touch disappeared from the museum experience? Not entirely. When the visitor takes in the artwork through sight, it is felt in their body. The response is as physical and as physiological as it is intellectual. In figurative art, we often find ourselves identifying with the protagonist of a painting or sculpture, wondering how it would feel to be in the same space, time, or situation. It is an intense way to vicariously feel human, and we explore this through our empathetic process. There is an urgent need to feel the textures and frameworks of life. Daily activities of life in 21st century America is an effort to get away from those textures, to fade into a stark, simple, all-business routine that relies solely on logic derived from information overload. Our senses connect us intimately to the past, and they connect us to one another. The senses deconstruct reality into vibrant fragments and reassemble them into a meaningful pattern. They allow an instance to stand in for a mob. The senses feed shards of information to the brain like microscopic pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. It is in your head. Everything you have ever heard, smelled, tasted, or touched is in there. Most of it has been pushed to the back, like things in a real museum, but an enormous amount is still there when you need it. You can get it out and have an exhibition whenever you want. You can spend as long as you like wandering around it. As you get older, many things that you did not understand when you first stowed them away suddenly start making sense. Bring them back from the basement. Memory is your museum. your cabinet of curiosities. It will never be full. There is always room for something new and strange and marvelous. Thank you so much for coming along with me on my journey. I hope you have a wonderful day or night, and I will see you next week.